Hi everyone. Tonight, we enter the fragile quiet of a medieval winter dawn. You are inside a hut built almost entirely from rough, unfinished timber. It's the kind of shelter where the walls creak as though they have a life of their own, and every blast of wind outside feels as if it's probing for tiny gaps to slip through. You lie beneath a thin, mismatched blanket, your body pressed close to the shared warmth of others. Even so, you can still see your breath drifting upward like pale smoke in the dim glow of dying embers. Frost clings to the roof beams, tiny crystals sparkling above you like a frozen constellation. A sudden realization crosses your mind. You likely wouldn't endure this if you had to face it in real life. Before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I create here. And if you're listening right now, leave a comment sharing your location and the time of night, because there's something quietly comforting about knowing where others around the world are lying awake. Now, lower the lights, and let's move further into the story. The hut you wake up in is far removed from modern comfort. Picture walls made from split logs, their gaps packed with clay or dung to block drafts, though never sealed completely. A thatched roof droops slightly under the weight of snow, each strand of straw stiff with ice. Beneath you is a rough floor of packed earth, scattered with straw meant to soften it, damp in spots where melting snow has found its way inside. The air is thick and still, carrying a faint, sharp trace of smoke that never fully fades, no matter how often the fire is fed. You shift, half buried beneath a pile of bodies that serves as bedding. It's a well-established historical fact that medieval families often slept together. Parents, children, even servants lay shoulder to shoulder simply to preserve heat. This wasn't about closeness alone, it was basic physics. You feel a younger sibling curled against your legs, your mother's back warm at your side, and above you, the sound of your father's cough rattling through the rafters. Even so, the night has been restless. You recall the sting of cold waking you repeatedly, the way frost crept over your toes despite layers of wool. You're thankful for the blanket, but it's more a patchwork of memories than a true barrier against the cold. Old scraps of cloth, carefully stitched together, heavy yet never fully warm. You pull it higher beneath your chin, trying to hold onto whatever heat remains. There's something eerie about these mornings, when night hasn't fully lifted and day hasn't quite arrived. The glow of embers stains the ceiling in dull red patches, like blurred marks. Outside, a rooster crows far too early, its call softened by snow. Inside, every sound carries, the groan of timber beams expanding and contracting, the soft rhythm of breathing, the occasional rustle of a mouse brave enough to search for crumbs. Historians still debate whether frost was truly as common inside these huts as we imagine, or whether steady fires pushed the cold back more effectively than later stories suggest. Some argue that lingering embers kept interiors reasonably warm, while others believe seeing your breath indoors was an unavoidable part of winter life. You don't have the luxury of debating. The shiver running through you confirms the cold is very real. A curious thought passes through your mind. In some homes, people rubbed animal fat or grease onto their faces before sleeping, hoping it would act as a crude moisturizer and protect their skin from frost. You can almost smell it now, mixed with hay and the earthy odor of animals that sometimes shared the hut. The idea makes you wince, but in such bitter air, anything to keep skin from cracking would have seemed worthwhile. The door, little more than a plank set in place, rattles with another gust. You think of wolves, always present in stories, if not just beyond the clearing. The thought tightens your stomach. For now, though, any danger feels distant, buried under snow and silenced by cold. What's closer is the sound of your father rising, stirring the coals with a stick, muttering quietly as he tries to coax flame from fading embers. A hiss, a spark, the scent of wood smoke slowly returning. A sense of relief spreads through the hut, though no one moves except you. The medieval day begins in darkness and near silence, and you realize the night hasn't truly ended. It has simply shifted into another test of endurance. Sleep was never smooth. It broke often, stretched thin, woven with dreams and discomfort. You blink, watching frost tremble along the rafters, hearing the fire take hold, feeling your mother edge slightly closer to the warmth. This is where your day begins. Not with an alarm clock or the hum of a heater, but with the ache of cold, the weak glow of embers, and the quiet awareness that you've survived another night in a wooden hut through a brutal winter. Even though you want nothing more than to burrow deeper into warmth, the groan of timbers tells you morning has arrived, and survival requires movement. You lie still, hesitant to rise, feeling stiffness settle into your limbs. The air bites at your nose and cheeks, sharp and unforgiving. When you pull the patchwork cover higher, the warmth slips away, as fleeting as smoke through your fingers. A low groan sounds from the corner as another body shifts on the straw, reminding you that you are never truly alone here. Privacy doesn't exist in this world. The very idea would seem strange because survival depends on closeness. Families gathered on straw pallets weren't just seeking comfort, they were creating living insulation. Another well-known historical fact is that beds as we know them today, with frames, mattresses, and layered bedding, were luxuries reserved for nobles and wealthy households. For ordinary people, sleep was simpler and much harsher. Imagine a single mound of straw spread over packed earth, flattened and scratchy, layered with hides, wool, or whatever cloth could be spared. Entire families gathered there, limbs intertwined, backs pressed together, faces tucked beneath the same worn blanket. This closeness wasn't optional. It was the line between surviving the winter night and shivering into exhaustion. You feel that closeness now. Your younger brother, small and restless, is wedged against your side. His feet, cold as stone, press into your legs as he searches for warmth. Beyond him, your sister curls tightly like a hedgehog, her hair tangled against your arm. Your mother, positioned at the center, cradles the smallest child, a toddler still young enough to slip easily into sleep, regardless of the cold. At the far edge, your father stretches out his long legs, instinctively trying to block the drafts sneaking through the gaps in the wall. A small but telling detail enters the scene. At times, straw pallets weren't reserved only for people. In the tightest huts, animals might share the sleeping space as well, especially young goats or lambs. Their body heat was valuable, and although the smell was hardly pleasant, the comfort of another warm, living presence outweighed the inconvenience. It was a simple form of heating, alive, breathing, and often noisy. You picture a goat bleating softly in the night or a hen shifting near your feet, both companions and necessities in the ongoing fight against the cold. Historians continue to debate whether these shared sleeping arrangements strengthened family bonds or quietly fueled tensions during long winters. Some suggest the closeness built resilience and a sense of shared struggle, while others believe frustrations must have simmered when everyone, from infants to elders, was pressed together night after night with no relief. You can easily imagine both being true. Knowing you were never alone brought comfort, yet the constant closeness must sometimes have felt overwhelming. The sensations of such nights settle deep into your body. The sting of straw poking through thin fabric. The dull pressure of a sibling's elbow against your ribs. The heavy, musky smell of wool blankets left unwashed for months. Above all, there is the shared rhythm of breathing. The hut itself feels alive, almost like a single organism, with every person inside contributing warmth, sound, and scent. You fall asleep and wake again not as an individual, but as part of a tightly packed whole. As dawn pushes faint light through the cracks in the wooden slats, the scene is almost humorous. Limbs draped over one another, mouths hanging open, hair sticking out in every direction, children drooling onto sleeves, parents murmuring half-formed words from their dreams. The hut feels less like a bedroom and more like a communal nest, improvised, yet essential. You shift slightly, brushing aside straw, and realize how much of medieval life revolved around these basic arrangements. The ground beneath the pallet is uneven, packed earth that turns damp when snow melts near the doorway. To counter this, families sometimes laid down reeds or dry leaves beneath the straw. Still, no matter how carefully it was prepared, by the end of winter the bedding was flattened, filthy, and alive with tiny intruders. Lice, fleas, and mites were constant companions, accepted by many households as unavoidable. You scratch at your neck, half from memory and half from irritation, knowing that rest was never free from interruption. Even so, the warmth of shared bodies outweighs the discomfort. Try to imagine sleeping alone in that hut, the the cold pressing in, the silence heavy, fears of wolves or spirits growing stronger without others nearby. Each breath around you is reassurance that life continues, that you belong to something enduring. It's a lesson in survival that modern sleepers, tucked away in private rooms, may struggle to understand. Closeness was not a nuisance. It was survival itself. A comparison comes to mind when you think of noble households. While peasants shared a single straw pallet, wealthier families slept in large wooden beds hung with thick curtains. These curtains weren't decorative, they trapped warmth, creating a small, insulated space. In its own way, your straw pallet achieves the same result through sheer numbers. What nobles accomplished with fabric, peasants achieved with bodies and breath. There is also safety in sleeping together. No one is left exposed at the edge of the hut. If a draft slips in, if a sound outside startles you awake, if a child cries out, the family responds as one. You are never truly defenseless when you are part of the group. And though your body aches from the lack of space, you know you wouldn't trade it for solitude. Even dreams seem shared here. One sibling mutters in sleep. Another kicks at imagined dangers, and you half dream of the same wolves or raiders, as if fear drifts through the entire cluster. Perhaps this is why folklore and superstition flourished, as shared experiences blurred the line between waking life and dreams. Your father stirs again, rising to tend the fire. His movement wakes the others, and slowly the tangled nest of bodies begins to separate. Children rub their eyes, mothers quiet babies, and the hut fills with low, murmured voices. Morning is never silent, because survival requires motion. Already, the straw pallet feels less like a bed and more like a reminder. It's time to get up, gather wood, and face another day. You turn over, reluctant to leave the warmth of the group. The cold beyond the blanket is immediate and sharp, making you hesitate. Still, life's rhythm allows no delay. You smile faintly, knowing that tonight, tomorrow, and through many nights yet to come, you'll return to this same spot, this same cluster of bodies, this same fragile warmth at the center of winter's harshness. You stretch your legs beneath the covers, trying to work warmth back into your toes. Even with bodies pressed together on straw, the cold lingers like an unwelcome guest. The blanket slips from your shoulders, and you quickly pull it back, feeling the rough patches scrape against your skin. In the dim firelight, you notice something you barely think about in summer: the layers of clothing you wear even while sleeping. A well-known historical fact is that medieval people rarely undressed for bed as modern sleepers do. Nightwear, as we know it, was uncommon outside wealthy homes. Most peasants simply slept in their daytime clothes or whatever extra tunics and cloaks they could pile on. Comfort wasn't the goal, staying alive was. You glance down now, wrapped in a coarse wool tunic, a worn linen shift beneath it, and a patched cloak pulled over your shoulders. Your legs are covered in thick hose, the wool itchy but thankfully warm, and your feet are wrapped in scraps of cloth serving as makeshift socks. The feeling is familiar, the constant irritation of wool, the weight of damp fabric, the way layers twist uncomfortably through the night. Yet without them, the cold would bite far deeper. You remember your mother's quiet reminder each evening as she urged you to add one more layer. Better the itch than the cold. Another small detail comes to mind. Some peasants stuffed straw or fabric scraps into their clothing for extra insulation. Picture stuffing dry grass into the gaps of your tunic, turning yourself into something like a scarecrow, but one protected from the night air. In especially harsh winters, even that seemed clever, and you can almost hear the faint rustle of straw with every movement. Historians continue to debate whether layering clothing for sleep was a universal habit or more common in northern regions where winters were especially severe. Some records suggest that peasants in milder southern climates may have removed layers for comfort, while others argue that across Europe the fear of cold outweighed any desire to sleep lightly clothed. You suspect, as with many things, the reality lies somewhere in between. Habits shaped by location, poverty, and necessity. You look around at your family, noticing how each person is wrapped in their own particular way. Your father wears the same cloak he uses in the fields, its hem worn thin and the wool stiff from long use. Your mother has layered 2 linen shifts beneath a heavy overdress and pulls a faded scarf over her hair, tucking the ends under her chin to keep her face warm. Your sister grips a piece of fur so worn it barely deserves the name, yet it still shields her hands as she draws them close to her chest. The smell of these garments is impossible to ignore, a blend of smoke, sweat, and damp wool. Washing clothes in winter is rare. Water freezes, streams become dangerous, and drying fabric in the cold is nearly impossible. Instead, the clothes carry the memory of daily labor, every hearth fire, and every night's sleep. They are less garments than companions in survival, worn thin but stubbornly protective. You shift on the straw, adjusting your cloak around your shoulders, and think about the rare luxuries you've heard described. Lords in castles wearing fur-lined robes, merchants sleeping on feather-stuffed mattresses with linen nightshirts. Such stories feel closer to myth than reality. For you, sleep is always wrapped in scratchy wool, the weight of patched cloth, and the shared warmth of garments passed down from one generation to the next. Still, there is comfort in the ritual of preparing for bed. Each evening, as the fire burns low, your family gets ready not by removing clothing, but by adding it. Scarves are wound tighter, cloaks pulled closer, woolen caps tugged down over ears. The act itself becomes a signal. The world outside is cold, but together, wrapped and layered, you will endure. The air bites at your skin when your father opens the door briefly to check the snow. A surge of icy wind rushes in, and you shudder, pulling the blanket tighter around you. In that moment, the value of those layers is undeniable. Without them, a single gust could cut straight through you. With them, you are protected, imperfectly, but enough to hold winter at bay. There is also dignity in these clothes. They bear the marks of your family's resourcefulness. A patch your mother stitched last spring. Wool dyed with onion skins to give it a hint of color. Linen woven by your grandmother's hands decades earlier. Sleeping in these garments means wrapping yourself not only in warmth, but in memory. Every stitch tells a story. Every patch is proof that your family has endured many winters before. Discomfort, however, is unavoidable. You turn restlessly, fabric bunching beneath you, the itch of wool persistent. You scratch your arm, sigh, and try to settle again. Perhaps this explains why medieval people were used to broken sleep, waking in the middle of the night, shifting, then drifting off once more. The body, restless beneath heavy layers, needed small pauses before surrendering again to rest. A quiet complaint rises as your sister mutters about the itch of her blanket. Your mother hushes her gently, reminding her that warmth matters more than comfort. You think, with a faint smile, that medieval parenting often meant balancing endurance against complaint. You close your eyes again, adjusting the cloak at your neck, and let yourself drift. The cold remains, but it is softened by fabric and family. Wrapped and weighted, your body finally begins to relax. Your dreams will likely be filled with frost and discomfort, yet there is reassurance in knowing that even in hardship, you are clothed, protected, and bound to others in the struggle against winter. The night stretches on, filled with the rustle of fabric, the persistent itch of wool, and the shared warmth of layered bodies resisting the cold together. Sleep, imperfect as it is, returns not through comfort, but through endurance stitched into every thread you wear. You stir again later, restless, as the fire has faded to a quiet glow. The cold presses closer, slipping through gaps in the hut, and you instinctively burrow deeper beneath the blanket. Nearby, another source of warmth makes itself known, your animal companions. It is a well-established historical fact that in many medieval households, animals were not kept in separate barns, but shared the living space with the family. In small cottages and wooden huts, especially during winter, it was common for livestock to stay indoors at night. Chickens, goats, pigs, and sometimes even a calf might settle just a few feet from where you slept, their bodies adding valuable warmth to the hut. This mixing of human and animal life may seem strange today, but it was practical, efficient, and often essential. You shift slightly on the straw and hear the soft grunt of a pig settling into its pile of hay near the hearth. The smell is unmistakable, earthy and strong, blending with smoke and damp wool until it becomes the scent of everyday life. Somewhere in the darkness, a chicken rustles, feathers brushing the floor as it finds a place to roost. These sounds are part of your lullaby, familiar and quietly reassuring. Where there are animals, there is warmth. And where there is warmth, there is hope of making it through the night. A small detail surfaces in your thoughts. Stories were told of children who grew so fond of their animal companions that they preferred the warmth of a pig to that of their siblings. A pig, after all, gives off heat like a living stove, its solid body offering comfort no wool cloak could match. You imagine pressing your frozen feet against its side, feeling relief spread as the cold slowly fades. Historians still debate whether this practice was common everywhere or more typical of Northern Europe, where winters were especially harsh. Some scholars argue that in wealthier regions, animals were kept separate to reduce disease and filth, while in poorer or rural communities, necessity outweighed concerns for hygiene. Whatever the full truth, sharing space with animals shaped daily life, influencing not only how people slept, but how they experienced the world around them. You glance across the dim interior of the hut now. Your father snores quietly, his body angled toward the hearth where the pig occasionally grunts. Your sister shifts in her sleep, murmuring softly, her small hand stretching out until it brushes against the fur of a nearby tethered goat. The animal stirs but doesn't object. It too welcomes the shared warmth. Your mother's breathing is calm and steady, her arm wrapped securely around the youngest child, holding them close to her chest. Around you, the hut feels less like a simple shelter of wood and clay and more like a crowded vessel of survival, humans and animals together, enduring the storm. The air is thick with mingled breath, visible in the glow of embers as it rises in faint clouds toward the rafters. Every sound joins the nighttime chorus, the steady rhythm of snoring, a soft bleat, the scrape of claws as a chicken resettles. It is not a silent night, but there is comfort in this layered noise, a reminder that life continues even as frost presses against the door. Animals offer another benefit besides warmth: protection. Pigs grunt at unfamiliar sounds. Dogs bark if something moves outside. Geese hiss at shadows. In the deep quiet of medieval nights, these living alarms were as important as heat. You can almost picture a wolf circling the edge of the village, discouraged not by walls, but by the clamor of animals inside. In this way, your family shares both warmth and vigilance, each creature serving as a watchful presence in its own way. You stretch your legs again, your foot brushing the straw where the goat rests. Heat radiates back instantly, and you sigh with brief relief. Then you pull away, knowing that comfort comes with trade-offs. The smells that cling to your clothes, the fleas that travel from animal hides to human bedding, the awareness that your sleep is shared with more than just family. Yet in the scale of medieval concerns, warmth ranks above odor, and so you accept it. Consider how this arrangement shaped childhood memories. A medieval child's lullabies would have included not only a mother's voice, but the grunt of a pig, the bleat of a goat, the rustle of hens. Dreams were filled with barnyard sounds because, in truth, the bedroom was partly a barn. Later in life, those children might laugh about winters when a cow's side was the best source of heat. Here in the dim hut, you close your eyes again, drifting with the sounds. The warmth of family and animals blends until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. The hut may be fragile, thin walls, a roof dusted with frost, but inside it pulses with life. You breathe in smoke, straw, and fur, and though your body aches, your mind feels steadier. Still, vulnerability hangs over this scene. Disease spreads easily in close quarters. Fleas jump from animal to child. Illness thrives in damp huts filled with breath. Historians continue to debate how much this closeness contributed to medieval health problems, questioning whether proximity to animals strengthened immune systems or weakened them. You, however, don't dwell on such questions. Your concerns are simpler. Will the fire last until morning? Will the roof hold under snow? Will shared warmth be enough? You pull the blanket closer, pressing against your sibling's side, listening to the pig's low grunt and the faint scratching of claws. It's an unusual comfort, but it's yours. As your eyes close, you realize you are not facing the night alone. Everyone in the hut, human and animal, shares the fight against the cold, and together you might just endure another night of winter. The hours pass, and though the animals near the hearth give off steady heat, the fire's fading glow draws your attention. You shift on the straw, watching the embers pulse weakly, like a heartbeat struggling to keep the hut alive. The fire is the center of this fragile world. Without it, the cold would rush in unchecked. You know this from nights when the flame faltered, when breath felt icy in your lungs, fingers stung like needles, and darkness pressed close. It is a well-established historical fact that most medieval homes, especially peasant huts, relied on a simple open hearth. There was no chimney, no clear path for smoke to escape, just a hole in the roof or a rough vent if fortune allowed. The fire burned at the center, bringing warmth but also filling the hut with thick smoke that made eyes water and lungs ache. Despite this, the hearth was essential. Without it, food couldn't be cooked, water couldn't be boiled, and surviving winter nights would have been impossible. You cough softly as smoke drifts low, clinging to the rafters and darkening the frost where soot settles. The air is heavy and sharp, stinging your eyes. Yet the smoke also serves a purpose. It drives away pests, helps preserve meat hung above the fire, and settles into clothing, forming a smoky barrier against vermin. You adjust your cloak, aware that it carries the scent of countless nights, soaked so deeply that it will never fully fade. A curious thought surfaces. In some regions, families let fires smolder overnight not to avoid smoke, but because they believed evil spirits feared the acrid haze. Imagine stinging eyes and coughing lungs seen not as hardship, but as protection. Parents told children the smoke kept demons away, and in the flickering winter light, such ideas must have felt real. Historians still debate whether medieval huts were truly choked with smoke each night or whether careful fire tending and simple ventilation made conditions more bearable than we assume. Some archaeological evidence shows blackened rafters and soot-covered walls, signs of generations of smoky fires. Others argue that skill and small design choices allowed families to strike a livable balance. Curled on the straw now, you judge only by your watering eyes. Smoke is a constant companion, for better or worse. Your father shifts near the hearth, muttering as he stirs the embers. He adds a small log and blows gently, coaxing the flame. The orange glow swells, casting warm light across the hut. For a moment, everyone is visible, your mother's tired face, your siblings' flushed cheeks, the animals settling in their corners. Then the light dims again, returning to a careful smolder. The fire remains small, wood is scarce in winter, and every piece must be stretched to last. You remember the autumn ritual of gathering branches, knowing each one would matter when the cold finally came. Whole days were spent gathering, chopping, and stacking wood, always with the worry of whether the pile would be enough. Too little wood meant too little fire, and too little fire meant long nights of suffering. That fear lingers even now as you hear the crackle weaken and watch your father pause before adding more fuel. Your throat feels dry from the smoky air, and you swallow carefully. You notice how the hut smells: burned pine resin, damp wood sizzling, smoke thick enough to cling to your hair. The scent will stay with you all winter, so familiar that you may stop noticing it. Only outsiders, travelers or visitors, would comment on the heavy haze, their eyes watering, their voices strained. For you, this is simply life. The animals shift in their hay as the fire flickers again. The pig grunts, the goat stretches, a chicken beats its wings once. They too depend on the warmth, drawn instinctively closer to the hearth. The hut feels more crowded as every living thing inches toward the heat. For a moment, you think of the fire as the true master of the household. You serve it, tend it, fear it, and rely on it. Without it, you are defenseless against the cold. There is skill in keeping a fire alive. Your father covers the logs with ash, creating a slow, even burn meant to last until dawn. You remember watching him as a child, fascinated by the way he managed the fire's life, coaxing it as if it were a fragile creature. Even now, you can't help but observe, learning, storing the movements in memory. In winter, fire is knowledge, and knowledge means survival. Yet danger is never far. You recall stories whispered through the village of huts catching fire at night, flames racing through straw and thatch, families running barefoot into the snow. The smoke you breathe now, protective in one sense, is also a reminder of that constant risk. You turn over, listening to the crackle, wondering whether tonight the fire will stay gentle or suddenly flare, hungry for air. Despite the unease, the fire soothes you. Its glow throws moving shadows on the walls, turning cracks into shifting forms. You watch them idly, your thoughts drifting. Some shapes resemble animals, others twisted figures, and in your half-dreaming state they become fleeting companions. Your breathing slows, your body easing under the blanket. The smoke still scratches your throat, but the warmth makes it worthwhile. Each ember feels like a small miracle, carrying the promise of another morning. You wonder what tomorrow will bring: more wood, more food, renewed strength, or simply another day of endurance. For now, as your eyes close again, the fire holds. The hut remains alive, and in its smoky shelter, you slip back into uneasy but necessary sleep. The hut is thick with smells: smoke, damp wood, and something earthier that clings to the straw beneath you. When you stir, your nose wrinkles, not from surprise but familiarity. This is the scent of survival, and though it would shock someone from another age, it is all you know. One well-established detail of medieval homes is that the combined odors of daily life were unavoidable. Floors were not polished boards, but packed earth, often mixed with dung and clay to harden them. Over time, moisture crept in. Hay decayed, and the air filled with a mix of wet wool, burning peat, sweat, and sharp smoke. Even so, this was normal. Stepping outside into clean snow might have felt fresher, but the cold was merciless. Inside, you tolerated the smell because it came with warmth. You breathe in again and catch the sharpness of damp straw where water was spilled the day before. It mingles with the sour note of fermenting ale stored in a jug near the hearth. Beneath it all lingers the musk of animals settling nearby. In such a tight space, the senses never rest. Everything shares the same air. One interesting custom recorded in rural communities involved scattering herbs, mint, sage, or juniper, across the floor or into bedding. This added a fresher scent and was believed to repel pests. You picture your mother crushing dried leaves between her palms, the fragrance briefly masking the smell of dung and sweat. It may have worked for a short time, but the smoky haze always returned to dominance. Scholars still debate how medieval people truly experienced these odors. Were their senses dulled by routine, or did they quietly long for relief, dreaming of clean linen washed in icy rivers? Modern readers recoil at descriptions of rot and reek. Yet perhaps, in their time, such smells faded into the background, simply part of existence. The hut's walls add their own note to the air. Built from logs sealed with clay and dung, they release a musty scent whenever dampness seeps in. Touching the wall leaves an earthy trace on your hand. In summer, the smell is sharper, almost grassy. In winter, it grows heavier, thick with trapped moisture and smoke. Your body adapts. After a while, you stop noticing the strength of the odor until something new enters. A curl of charred wood from the hearth, a sudden whiff of goat, the sharp tang of unwashed feet. Each new scent shifts the air again, layering until the hut becomes a woven tapestry of survival. You smile faintly, remembering how children sometimes turned this into a game, guessing the source of each smell. One sibling might wrinkle their nose and accuse another of dragging pig stink into the bedding. Another would laugh and point toward boots drying by the door. Humor softened the burden, even when the truth was clear. Everything smelled because everything was alive, enclosed, and enduring together. Outside, the wind whistles, cold and clean. You imagine stepping into it, your lungs filling with air so sharp it burns, only to retreat moments later, desperate for the hut's warmth. Heavy as it is, the smell inside suddenly feels preferable to frostbite. You realize how survival reshapes values. A smoky, pungent hut means life. Clean air, if it kills you, is no gift. The overload of senses shapes your dreams as well. When you drift into sleep, smells blend into images. Smoke becomes shadowed figures. Sour ale turns into strange feasts. The musk of animals transforms into phantom herds moving across snowy fields. Medieval dreams were never silent or scentless. They were crowded, just like waking life. Experts still have not reached agreement on whether these odors played a role in spreading disease. Some medical historians suggest that poor air quality weakened the lungs, encouraging illnesses such as consumption. Others argue that the smoke, while uncomfortable, may have helped cleanse the air and limit infection. Whatever the truth, you know what your body tells you. Your eyes burn, your throat feels raw. Yet without this smoky veil, you would be colder, hungrier, and far less likely to survive. You pull the blanket tighter, shutting your eyes against the sting of ash. The damp straw prickles your skin. Your nose reacts to the animal's musk, but there is comfort woven through it all. These smells form the rhythm of your existence, tying you to the hut, to your family, to the animals breathing the same air. And though modern senses might find it unbearable, to you it is simply the scent of home. The embers glow dimly as shadows move again across the smoke-darkened rafters. You allow the heaviness of the hut's atmosphere to settle over you like an added layer of warmth. It is flawed, pungent, and at times suffocating, but it is yours. With it comes the promise that dawn will return, and with dawn, the fragile continuation of life inside this wooden shelter. The fire's glow sinks lower once more. This time, your father does not add fuel. Instead, he kneels slowly, gathering ash with steady, practiced hands, covering the coals beneath a soft gray layer. You watch sleepily, puzzled at first by why he hides the very thing that sustains you. But you have seen this ritual many times and understand its purpose: to preserve the fire until morning without wasting precious wood. Historical records show that banking embers was a nightly practice in countless medieval homes. Without matches or easy tools for lighting fires, allowing flames to die completely meant hours of work to restore them. Flint and steel could create sparks, but drawing a flame from dry tinder in damp winter air was never guaranteed. So families treated embers like delicate treasures, tucking them safely into ash where they could smolder until dawn. You remember how, as a child, you were fascinated by the glowing coals. They seemed alive, breathing slowly, pulsing red beneath their covering of ash. Your father would quiet you if you tried to poke them, warning that too much air would extinguish their glow. Even now, you resist the urge to disturb them. Embers are patient yet fragile, and careless hands can steal a family's warmth in moments. One curious belief recorded in village customs held that embers dying during the night foretold bad luck for the household. Some families whispered small charms over the hearth, half prayer and half routine, hoping to ensure the fire survived until sunrise. You can picture your grandmother murmuring softly in the darkness, pressing a cross of ash onto the hearthstone before covering the coals. Whether or not such gestures worked, they offered reassurance. Scholars remain divided on how safe this method truly was. Some argue that burying embers beneath ash produced carbon monoxide and made huts dangerously smoky. Others believe the technique was reasonably safe when handled with care. Archaeological evidence of hearths layered with ash suggests the practice was widespread. Perhaps the truth lay in balance. Too much ash smothered the fire. Too little let it flare. Skill rested in judgment, sharpened through long winters and countless nights of experience. You imagine the embers now, faint and hidden, still quietly alive. Without open flame, the hut darkens, leaving only soft orange hints glowing through the ash. It feels as if the heart of the house has been put to rest, just as the family has. Around you, bodies settle again, releasing quiet sighs as sleep returns. The pig grunts once and burrows deeper into straw. The goat exhales slowly. Your sister murmurs in her dreams. The night resumes its rhythm, calmer now, soothed by the certainty that warmth waits beneath the ashes. The act of banking embers also carried meaning beyond practicality. Fire was more than a tool, it was a presence imbued with significance. In some communities, hearth fires were never allowed to die, passed down through generations like a living inheritance. You imagine a bride carrying glowing coals from her childhood home to her new dwelling, lighting her married life with the continuity of flame. Such customs remind you that fire represented not only heat, but identity, connection, and blessing. You shift slightly, pulling your cloak higher, and recall mornings when the fire had gone out. Those days were bitter. Your father crouched with flint and steel, sparks falling uselessly onto damp tinder while everyone shivered nearby. The memory alone deepens your gratitude for the faint glow resting under the ash tonight. Survival feels easier when you know the fire still lives. There is also a rhythm to the ritual. Banking the embers signals that the household's day has truly ended. Chores are done, animals fed, bedding claimed. No further work will begin until daylight. It is the medieval equivalent of extinguishing the final lamp, a shared act that draws the family into collective rest. You close your eyes, comforted by the knowledge that the fire has been laid to sleep just as you have. Still, doubt lingers. What if a gust of wind slips through the cracks and extinguishes it? What if the ash shifts and the coals cool too fast? Uncertainty always waits at the edge of thought. Yet worry changes nothing. Like so much in your world, survival depends on trust. Trust in skill, in routine, in the stubborn endurance of fire itself. You breathe out into the darkness, your breath curling like smoke, and let the muted warmth of the buried embers sink into your bones. Tomorrow they will be uncovered, coaxed back into flame, and the cycle will repeat. For now, you rest in the quiet assurance that your family has carried fire through another night, guarding it like a fragile secret against winter's endless hunger. The hut grows still again, wrapped in silence, broken only by the soft settling of ash. Your eyelids droop, your body heavy with exhaustion. Deep within the hearth, beneath its dusty cover, the embers wait patiently. You picture them as small guardians in the dark, ensuring that when the sun rises, warmth will return once more. With that thought, you finally drift, soothed by the hidden heartbeat of fire sleeping under ash. The night stretches on, and as your body shifts restlessly on the straw, you realize that true rest comes in fragments. Sleep never arrives as a single, unbroken stretch from dusk to dawn. Instead, you wake again and again, your mind suspended between weariness and alertness. This pattern is not unique to you. It belongs to your age, to your world, to countless people lying in huts like this across the frozen landscape. One well-documented feature of medieval rest is this pattern of segmented sleep. Instead of sinking into one unbroken stretch of rest, people often fell asleep soon after nightfall, then woke in the middle of the night for a quiet period of wakefulness before drifting into a second sleep that lasted until dawn. Diaries, sermons, and even medical writings describe this pattern as entirely normal. Without artificial light, darkness itself seemed to guide the body's sense of time. You feel it now. After only a few hours beneath the patched quilt, you wake again, your gaze drawn to the faint red shimmer of the banked embers. Around you, your family stirs as well. Your father coughs softly. Your sister turns in her sleep. Your mother moves just enough to calm the baby. The hut hums with subtle motion, half asleep but not fully at rest. No one speaks above a whisper. Voices stay low, as if even words might snap the fragile thread of warmth holding everyone together. You push yourself up slightly, rubbing your eyes and listening. Outside, the wind groans through the trees, and snow slides softly from the roof. The night feels endless. Yet in this pause, you sense the strange intimacy of these hours. They belong neither to day nor to night, but exist somewhere between. A time when thoughts wander freely and worries feel sharper. Modern researchers still debate why segmented sleep was so widespread. Some believe it reflects natural human biology, with the body inclined to wake after an initial rest. Others suggest it grew from necessity. Fires required tending, animals needed checking, and threats had to be watched for. Whatever the reason, this rhythm gave nights a peculiar dual nature. Half dreaming, half waking, both shaping life inside the hut. You remember your father sharing stories during these hours. Not long tales meant for everyone, but quiet fragments whispered from parent to child in the dark. Stories of saints crossing frozen peaks. Of villagers who tricked wolves. Of spirits roaming snowbound nights. These stories were more than distraction. They calmed your restless thoughts, turning fear into something manageable, if only briefly. Sometimes these midnight hours were practical. Your mother might rise silently to mend a torn seam by the embers' glow, her hands quick and practiced. Or she might begin preparing dough, ready for baking at first light. Neighbors, too, used this time. Some accounts describe villagers visiting one another between first and second sleep, sharing ale, prayers, or hushed conversation. The night, though risky, had its own social rhythm. You shift again on the straw, listening to your siblings breathing. They stir in their sleep, tugging at woolen blankets, murmuring half-formed words. The closeness of bodies ensures that no one sleeps in complete isolation. A cough, a sneeze, the rustle of straw ripples through the group, waking one as another drifts off. Sleep becomes not an individual act, but a shared pattern, woven together like the threads of your patched quilt. You consider how strange this would seem to someone centuries later, accustomed to silent rooms and steady lamplight. To them, waking at midnight might signal restlessness or illness. But here in your hut, it is simply how nights unfold. The darkness is too long to endure without pause. Dividing it gives it rhythm and makes it bearable. One quiet custom spoken of among villagers was using these hours for prayer. Some believed the soul stood closer to heaven in the deep night, when the world lay hushed. Kneeling by the hearth, hands clasped in smoky darkness, they asked saints for protection from frost, wolves, or sickness. Perhaps you have done the same once or twice, murmuring words that rose with the smoke toward the rafters. Scholars still wonder how segmented sleep shaped medieval minds. Did these waking hours deepen dreams? Did they encourage reflection, creativity, or visions that felt almost mystical? In sermons and confessions, people spoke of temptations and revelations that arrived in the midnight pause, as though the line between waking and dreaming blurred. You lean back against the wall, watching the faint glitter of frost above. The silence is thick, broken only by your father's soft snore and the occasional shuffle of the pig in its corner. The air remains smoky but less stifling than before. The embers breathe quietly beneath their blanket of ash. This is a time for thinking, for wondering, for listening to your own heartbeat echo in the stillness. Slowly, sleep claims you again. Your eyelids sink, your body loosens, and you ease back into the straw. Around you, the others do the same. One by one, your family settles into second sleep, slipping into dreams that will carry you all toward morning. This broken night, strange to some, feels natural to you. The cold still presses in, but divided sleep becomes a shield, a way to endure the long winter hours one fragment at a time. And as you let go once more, you sense that this rhythm, wake, rest, mirrors survival itself. Never smooth, never perfect, yet persistent, carrying you from one fragile dawn to the next. You jerk awake at a sound beyond the wall, a long, low howl threading through the wind. Your first thought is wolves. The second is raiders. Neither brings comfort. You hold your breath, listening hard as your heart quickens beneath the blanket. Out here, in a wooden hut caught in winter's grip, the night brings more than cold. It brings danger. Contemporary chronicles make it clear that wolves were a constant worry in medieval Europe. Harsh winters pushed them closer to villages, hunger driving them to stalk livestock and, on desperate nights, even children. Stories spread of travelers vanishing along snowy paths, their end marked only by tracks fading into forest shadows. Whether exaggerated or not, the fear was genuine. Wolves were no mythical beasts, but predators of flesh and hunger, and thin wooden walls offered little protection. You draw the blanket tighter, glancing toward your siblings sleeping unaware. Your father stirs as well, lifting his head as if he heard the same sound. He does not rise. He only listens, one hand resting on the staff kept near the door. The silence that follows weighs heavier than the howl itself, stretching until you wonder if it was imagined. Then the wind strengthens, whistling through cracks in the wall, and the sound dissolves into its roar. One superstition often repeated by village fires claimed that wolves could be repelled by hanging juniper sprigs or iron charms above the doorway. Whether true or not, such practices gave families a sense of control over forces beyond them. You remember your mother tying a bundle of herbs to the beam last winter, her movements calm, though her eyes revealed unease. Scholars continue to debate how common winter raids by bandits or hostile neighbors truly were during this time. Some claim that severe weather discouraged attackers, while others point to records of burned villages and stolen food stores as proof that hunger could make men as dangerous as wolves. Whatever the numbers say, The fear cut deep enough to invade the dreams of those sleeping in huts like yours. Every creak in the timbers, every gust rattling the roof might signal footsteps crunching through snow. You shift uneasily, your ears fixed on the darkness. The hut groans as the wind presses against it, beams complaining like low voices. A chicken suddenly flaps its wings in alarm, and the goat bleats softly in its tether. The pig, though, remains asleep, a solid mass of warmth, unconcerned with whatever lurks outside. You breathe out slowly, reminding yourself that animals often sense danger first, and if they rest calmly, perhaps you can as well. Still, your thoughts refuse to settle. You imagine wolves circling the hut, paws sinking into fresh snow, their breath steaming in the cold air. You imagine raiders wrapped in cloaks, eyes shining beneath helmets, searching for food, fire, or something worse. The door separating you from them feels thin as paper. In truth, it is little more than a wooden plank weighed down with a stone. A story your grandmother once told surfaces in your mind. She spoke of a family so poor they brought their pig into the bedding heap each night, and one winter its squeals warned them of wolves trying to force the door. Whether fact or folklore, the tale endures because it teaches that survival often relies on unlikely allies. You reach out and rest your hand on the goat's coarse fur, feeling its steady heat. Perhaps that old story was not so far from reality. Modern scholars often debate how much medieval fear rested on fact and how much grew from legend. Were wolves truly everywhere, or did their rare appearances loom larger in memory? Were raids common, or simply terrifying enough to scar entire communities? The evidence is scattered, open to interpretation. But lying here now, the difference hardly matters. Fear feels real when a howl cuts through the night. Silence settles again, broken only by your family's slow breathing. Your father eases back down, convinced the danger has passed, but you remain tense, listening for another sound. The hut feels smaller, tighter, as if danger presses in from all sides. Yet you know this unease is part of life. Nights are never free of it. You pull the blanket closer, tucking your chin, reminding yourself that this moment has been lived by countless generations before you. Others have lain in similar huts, hearing similar howls, clutching similar blankets. The fear of what waits beyond wooden walls is stitched into winter life, as essential to survival as fire or food. Gradually, exhaustion dulls your senses. Your thoughts slow. Your body sinks back into the straw. Wolves may roam and raiders may wander, but the hut still stands, its walls holding against the storm. You close your eyes, whispering a half-formed prayer into the smoky dark. Protection. Warmth. Survival. As your breathing steadies, you slip once more into uneasy sleep, fragile yet persistent in the heart of winter. The night drags on, and though the howls have faded, the cold creeps steadily upward from the floor. You curl tighter into your cloak, shifting on the straw in search of even a small pocket of warmth. The ground seems alive with chill, as if the earth beneath the hut exhales frost straight into your bones. Without insulation, no one could rest here for long. Contemporary accounts confirm that medieval sleepers rarely lay directly on bare earth. Instead, they piled straw, hay, reeds, or rushes beneath them to form a barrier against the cold ground. This was the peasant's mattress, rough, temporary, and humble, yet essential. Even a thin layer of plant matter could mean the difference between manageable cold and deep, aching pain. You shift again, feeling the uneven pallet beneath you. Straw pricks your skin where the blanket has slipped, its texture harsh but familiar. Some stalks have been crushed flat by weeks of use, offering little protection. Others still trap small pockets of air, lifting you just enough above the damp soil. It is not comfortable, nothing like the feather beds nobles brag about, but it is enough to endure. One practice villagers sometimes followed was mixing animal hides into the bedding. Clean sheep skins or deer hides, laid fur side up, provided warmth that straw alone could not. You remember nights when your father returned from a hunt and spread a fresh hide beneath the family. It smelled of forest and animal, the fur tickling your legs, but it held heat so well that everyone crowded closer. In midwinter, a single hide felt like a treasure. Experts still disagree on how often bedding was replaced. Some believe straw pallets were renewed every few weeks, while others argue families stretched them through an entire season, no matter how foul they became. Archaeological traces of rushes pressed deep into floors suggest both scenarios, depending on means and care. You know the reality well enough. Once snow blankets the fields, gathering fresh straw is no simple task. Families endure the itch and smell until spring returns. You scratch at your arm, half asleep, half irritated. Fleas live in the straw, biting exposed skin. They are part of the night, like smoke or hunger. Your sister stirs beside you, slapping at her leg before turning over with a groan. You wonder how anyone ever sleeps deeply amid such constant discomfort. Then again, there is little choice. Weariness outweighs irritation, and fatigue always wins. The smell of the bedding is heavy too. Straw absorbs everything: sweat, spilled ale, sour milk, animal musk. Over weeks, the odor thickens, blending with smoke and damp wood until it seems to cling to your skin. And yet you cannot imagine sleeping without it. A bare floor would freeze you, and finer mattresses belong to nobles and priests, not to families in huts like yours. You picture those nobles resting in raised wooden frames, lying on thick mattresses stuffed with feathers or wool, curtains drawn to trap warmth, servants bringing fresh rushes, perfumes masking decay. Their lives feel like another world. Here, the mattress is shared, its stuffing both comfort and burden. But it is yours. Sometimes villagers tried to improve their pallets with small tricks passed down through generations. One was placing warm stones beneath the straw, wrapped in cloth so they would not burn. Another was adding layers of bracken fern, whose stiff leaves helped block dampness. These methods offered brief relief, though never perfection. You imagine your grandmother teaching you how to lay fern leaves in a crisscross, explaining they lasted longer than straw, her weathered hands moving with quiet confidence. There is debate among social historians about whether peasants truly resented their rough bedding. Some argue that people simply adapted to discomfort, their expectations shaped by necessity rather than comparison. Others believe they constantly yearned for better, quietly envying lords whose sleep was padded, clean, and sweet-smelling. Perhaps both views are accurate. Perhaps they endured while still wishing for more. You lie still now, your ear close to the bedding, and listen. The straw whispers softly as your sister shifts beside you, a dry, papery sound like grass in summer fields. Somewhere beneath, mice scuttle boldly, searching for crumbs dropped at supper. Near the door, the earth carries a faint mildew scent where melting snow has crept inside, a reminder that no barrier here is ever complete. And yet, despite everything, the fleas, the odors, the uneven lumps, you begin to recognize the quiet comfort hidden in this bed. It is not softness that calms you, but familiarity. Every stalk, every rustle, every prickling itch has accompanied you night after night, tying you to your family and this place. This is not a bed of luxury, but one of belonging. Your eyes grow heavy again, your body yielding to the rough embrace of straw and hides. You sigh and adjust your cloak so no bare skin meets the creeping draft. Others move as well, each shift subtly reshaping the shared mattress beneath you. It is noisy, uneven, and far from ideal. But it is warm enough, safe enough, and familiar enough to let sleep claim you once more. And so, in a wooden hut with straw laid thin over frozen earth, you close your eyes, carried into dreams not by comfort, but by endurance, necessity, and the shared warmth of survival. The hut hums with sounds that never fully fade. You lie awake briefly, not from cold this time, but because your ears catch the layered chorus of night. Silence does not exist here. The noises rise and fall, weaving into the fragile fabric of sleep. Some are soothing, others unsettling, but all remind you that the hut is alive. Written accounts from the period emphasize how constant sound was in medieval homes. Thin walls, open hearths, and shared living left no space between lives. Privacy was rare. Every cough, rustle, and murmur carried through the dark. At night, this closeness became unmistakable. Sleep was not quiet isolation, but a communal soundscape. You listen carefully. The timbers creak above, strained by the weight of snow. The roof answers with soft cracks, like an old man's joints. In the corner, your father snores in slow, heavy rhythms, interrupted by the occasional cough as smoke irritates his chest. Your mother's breathing is lighter, barely louder than cloth shifting. Beside you, your sister mutters in her sleep, her words broken and unclear. Travelers' diaries often noted how striking this nighttime chorus was in peasant homes. Visitors unused to such closeness wrote of restless bodies, overlapping snores, murmured dreams, and the constant movement of vermin. To you, raised within it, the sound feels as ordinary as wind through trees. You know each noise by heart, can tell which sibling kicks in sleep and which breathes like a bellows. One curious belief recorded in village custom was that a noisy sleeper was safer than a silent one. If someone's breathing grew too faint, family members would nudge them awake, fearing silence meant death had slipped into the hut. You remember your mother leaning over your brother one night, shaking him until he groaned in protest, only then relaxing at the sound. Scholars still debate whether medieval people slept more lightly because of these constant interruptions, or whether their bodies simply adapted to shorter, shallower rest. Some suggest chronic fatigue was common, explaining frequent daytime naps. Others believe the body learned to rest despite snores, coughs, and creaking walls. The truth likely sits between, never fully rested, yet resilient enough to continue. Outside sounds join those within. Wind wails through cracks, sometimes eerily like distant voices. Snow slides from the thatch with muted thuds. Far off, a dog barks, perhaps keeping watch, perhaps answering a howl deeper in the woods. These sounds seep into half-dreams, twisting them into strange stories. One moment you dream of storms and falling beams, the next of wolves scraping at the door. Not all sounds bring fear. Some are quietly reassuring. The soft crackle of embers tells you warmth still breathes in the hearth. The pig's low grunt nearby. The rustle of hens settling. The steady chewing of the goat. These sounds confirm that life endures. They are survival's lullabies, each one anchoring you to the present. You shift on the straw, tuning into smaller noises, the scratch of a mouse near the food stores, the drip of melted snow falling into a wooden bucket. These sounds reveal the hut's fragility. It is no fortress or palace, just a shelter pieced together from what was available. Its voice is full of leaks, creaks, and whispers. Yet to you it is home. Sometimes the night offers unexpected music. You remember evenings when your mother hummed softly to calm the children, her voice blending with the hiss of wind. Or when your father, awake during the midnight pause, whispered prayers to saints, the words low and steady. Even now, if you listen closely, you can hear your sister singing faintly in her sleep, a half-remembered lullaby. These delicate threads of sound float through the smoky air, offering comfort against the cold. Some scholars suggest that this constant soundscape shaped medieval memory and imagination. Without true silence, dreams and waking life blurred together, influenced by every creak and cough. Folklore of spirits and omens may have grown from such nights, when a groaning beam became a phantom's cry, or a snore a whispered warning. To live in sound was to live where reality and imagination constantly overlapped. You pull the blanket closer and let the noises wash over you. They distract, but they also reassure. Every sound signals life, movement, protection, endurance. Silence would be far worse. Silence would mean the fire is dead, the animals frozen, the family no longer breathing. Noise is proof of survival. Your eyelids grow heavy as the hut continues its restless song. The chorus does not stop, but slowly it fades into the background, steady and familiar. Like a lullaby, it guides you back into sleep. Your final thought is a simple one. This crowded, noisy hut, flawed and fragile, holds a living symphony that pushes back against the brutal winter outside. Your stomach grumbles softly, insistent, pulling you briefly from the edge of second sleep. Some historians argue that peasants genuinely feared spirits and demons, shaping daily routines and bedtime rituals. Others suggest the practices were more habitual than fearful, a way to create structure, comfort, and a sense of control when faced with the uncontrollable forces of winter. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps superstition and necessity were intertwined, each reinforcing the other. You lie still, letting the warmth of bread and ale settle through your body, but your mind drifts to the stories that shaped your childhood. The flickering shadows of the embers twist across the walls, and in them, you can almost see the frost hag's crooked figure prowling between the rafters. You recall your grandmother's voice, low and insistent, describing her icy fingers creeping across beds while children slept. The tales were frightening, yes, but they also carried guidance. Leave iron on the threshold, hang juniper, murmur protective words. These small actions offered the illusion, or perhaps the reality, of control. Your mother moves quietly near the hearth, tucking a sprig of juniper into the rafters. You watch her hands, steady and deliberate, knowing that the charm is as much about her own reassurance as about keeping spirits at bay. She mutters words softly, barely audible, repeating the familiar protective chant. Your father, somewhere in the shadows, murmurs something similar under his breath, a low cadence that blends with the hush of the hut. The baby stirs, a small whimper, but no frost demon claims him tonight. Records from the period suggest that superstition was deeply embedded in everyday life. Tales of night spirits, wandering souls, and frost demons were widespread across Europe. While modern eyes see them as fanciful or primitive, for those who lived under harsh winters, such beliefs were logical extensions of lived experience. Cold, hunger, disease, and danger were real. Unseen forces offered explanations when nothing else could. You sense the subtle tension of the night, the warmth of your shared bedding, the fading glow of embers, the faint creak of timber under snow, and yet, your imagination tugs you toward the unseen. The hut's darkness feels full, not empty, as if hidden shapes move just beyond the firelight. Every draft that slips between the logs, every cough and creak, feeds the ancient story of vigilance against forces you cannot name. Some historians continue to debate the seriousness with which peasants held these beliefs. Were they deeply feared or more like bedtime stories, tools for teaching caution, obedience, or respect for the unseen? Perhaps it was a little of both. Even if the frost hag never truly prowled the night, the rituals surrounding her kept families alert, bonded, and prepared. Whispering charms, hanging juniper, leaving iron at thresholds, these were small acts of agency in a world where so much remained beyond control. You exhale slowly, letting the fear and warmth coexist. Hunger has been softened, fire glows faintly beneath its ash, and the animals settle around you. Yet in the quiet, you remain aware. The night is not just cold and empty. It carries unseen watchers, and even if they exist only in the mind, their presence shapes your vigilance, your prayers, and the delicate routines that make survival possible. Your eyelids grow heavy again. The whispers, the chants, the subtle shadows, all weave into the rhythm of life in the hut. Sleep approaches, but only partially, leaving you poised between rest and alertness, guided by the warmth of hearth and family, and by the ever-present caution born of winter's darkness. Here, superstition, sustenance, and survival intertwine, carrying you into another fragile night under the thatch. Silence is presence. It is the rhythm of the hut, the soft pulse of life measured in breathing, shifting straw, and the faint warmth of embers tucked beneath ash. In this stillness, the world contracts to the size of your body, the circle of your family, the fragile shelter of walls and roof. You feel the weight of survival, not as fear, but as awareness. Every small sound, every muted movement, is a testament to endurance. The cold presses in, but it no longer startles. Hunger lingers, but it is softened by routine, by ritual, by the shared heartbeat of family. The wind outside, once a predator, now hums like a distant chorus, joining the symphony of the hut. You are enveloped by it all, warmth, smoke, straw, breath, and the faint echo of stories whispered in centuries past. In the dark, imagination mingles with reality. Shadows play along walls, shapes born of timber and firelight, yet hints of spirits or demons linger in the corners of perception. These thoughts rise and fade, absorbed into the gentle hush. Sleep creeps back, hesitant but inevitable, claiming fragments of your awareness. The hushed breathing around you blends into your own. And then, without ceremony, the mind drifts fully. The hut continues its quiet vigil. Outside, snow falls and wind sighs. Inside, the embers pulse faintly under ash, your family rests, and the night holds its fragile equilibrium. Every flicker, every creak, every sigh is survival made audible, woven into a lullaby older than memory. Here, in the heart of winter, in the smoky warmth of your wooden shelter, silence is not merely absence. It is life preserved, patience rewarded, and the soft, enduring rhythm of being. These hidden charms are quiet guardians, tucked into layers of cloth alongside memory and warmth. No one speaks of them. Their protection is believed, not displayed. As your fingers trace a seam, you imagine the careful hand of your mother pressing a tiny token into place, whispering a hope or a prayer before stitching it closed. Each one is a secret pact against misfortune, frost, illness, or wandering spirits. Scholars debate whether such practices were symbolic, devotional, or simply inherited habit, but for you, lying under the quilt, it feels instinctively protective. The quilt's weight deepens your sense of security. It presses you gently into the straw, carrying the warmth of embers, the shared bodies of your siblings, and the centuries of endurance sewn into its patches. The rough wool, softened linen, even the faintly pungent fur all converge into a tactile history, a map of survival and care. Each square is a story, your father's tunic, your grandmother's shirt, your mother's clever repairs. The quilt is a palimpsest of family life, every stitch both functional and ceremonial. Outside, the wind drifts across the roof, but inside, the hut feels smaller, protected. You feel the rhythm of the night, the steady inhale and exhale of the family around you, the embers pulsing quietly. Your hand drifts to your sister, resting on her small shoulder, then to the patchwork covering both of you. It is more than warmth. It is connection, memory, and ritual woven into threads. Some patches carry charm, some carry color, some carry the scent of older fires or the faint perfume of washed linen. All carry resilience. Experts point out that such quilts were rarely replaced entirely. They accumulated decades of use and repair, becoming archives of domestic life. For you, the weight is comforting rather than burdensome. It presses down physically, but lifts emotionally, reminding you that even in the harshest winter, your family endured, your ancestors endured, and so can you. With the lullaby lingering in your mind and the quilt's weight settling over you, the hut hums a quiet, layered lullaby of its own. Warmth, memory, protection, and the faint echo of countless nights survived. You close your eyes fully, sinking into the patchwork embrace, and for the first time in hours, the cold, the hunger, and the distant howls seem distant, softened by the dense, stitched history wrapped around your body. The night continues outside, relentless and vast, but here, beneath layers of cloth, family, and charm, you are held safe, carried gently toward dreams and toward dawn. The quilt weighs heavy over you, pressing warmth and memory into your body, yet your mind remains alert to the quiet dangers that winter brings. Each creak of timber, each hiss of the wind, each faint cough or whimper reminds you that life in the hut is delicate, precarious. You breathe slowly, listening to the rhythm of the household, the subtle rise and fall of chests, the small sighs, the occasional rustle of straw. Each sound carries its own meaning: health, restlessness, or illness. You imagine the charms sewn into the quilt as silent guardians against more than frost. They might watch over the sick, too. Perhaps a small iron fragment presses against your father's back, or a cross hidden in a patch sends quiet protection through the stitches. You do not know for certain, and perhaps it does not matter. The act of belief itself is comforting, the ritual of care grounding the household even when fear gnaws at the edges of consciousness. Your mother's hands move with gentle deliberation, checking blankets, adjusting the baby, smoothing straw, all while keeping her own vigilance for signs of illness. You feel her presence as a shield, as vital as fire or the quilt. Outside, the night stretches endlessly, but inside, the hut pulses with a fragile rhythm of survival, warmth, vigilance, care, and hope. Scholars note that medieval winter nights often blended vigilance with ritual, medicine with superstition. Smoke, fire, herbs, charms, prayers, all combined to hold the household together. Here, lying beneath the quilt, you understand it. The smoke is not only suffocating, it preserves. The cough is not only threatening, it is a signal to act. The quilt is not only a covering, it is an archive of generations, a talisman of endurance. Hours pass in this quiet vigilance, and the rhythm of life in the hut becomes a lullaby of its own. Fevered or healthy, awake or drifting, every movement is part of the fragile balance of survival. You press closer to your siblings, sharing warmth, sharing weight, sharing the unspoken promise of protection. Eventually, your body surrenders to exhaustion. Sleep comes, uneasy but inevitable, carrying you through fever dreams, worry, and the smoky, shadowed night. And in that surrender, you realize, in winter, illness is as much a part of life as the cold, the hunger, or the howls outside. Endurance is woven into every breath, every touch, every layer of cloth. And the night, long and merciless, is met not with comfort alone, but with vigilance, love, and the quiet courage of those who keep watch for each other until dawn. Another presence lingers in the smoky darkness, touching every breath, every dream, every delicate heartbeat. Sleep, when it finally comes, is uneasy. Hunger gnaws at your belly, and smoke curls in your lungs, shaping your dreams into jagged and unusual visions. You drift into a half-conscious state where winter and waking life merge, and every sound and scent seems uncanny. Historical manuscripts and personal accounts indicate that medieval people often described dreams with vivid, almost mystical detail. Hunger could distort ordinary visions into nightmares, while smoke might produce phantom shapes. Dreams were not considered random, they were seen as meaningful, messages from God, warnings from spirits, or reflections of one's moral state. You sense this truth as your dream unfolds. The hut in your vision is vast, with rafters rising like church arches, still blackened by smoke. The fire burns too brightly, its embers seeming almost alive. Your steps crunch on straw that whispers your name. The air is thick and heavy, carrying the familiar smells of smoke, sweat, and the sourness of empty stomachs, magnified into something almost tangible. Villagers sometimes believed that dreams caused by hunger were prophetic. An empty stomach, they thought, made the soul lighter and freer to wander. Dreaming of bread might signal a good harvest. Dreaming of meat could promise strength in the coming year. Even in sleep, you smile faintly as scraps of food appear in your vision, loaves steaming with impossible freshness, pots of stew that never empty, but they dissolve into smoke when you reach for them. Scholars continue to debate the influence of dreams on medieval decision-making. Some argue that dreams guided everything from planting to resolving disputes, while others insist they were mere fleeting entertainment. Yet lying here, twitching in your sleep, you sense why these dreams carried weight. In a world of uncertainty, they offered guidance, even if illusory. Your dream shifts again. Wolves howl outside, their cries stretching across the wind. When you turn to the door, you see not animals but shadows seeping through cracks in the walls. They twist like smoke, sliding silently across the floor. You clutch the blanket tighter, your breath quickening. Perhaps fever fuels this vision, or it is merely the imagination of a hungry child. In the hut with smoky rafters and groaning beams, such dreams feel less like fantasy and more like a continuation of waking fears. Some sermons recorded that priests warned against sinful dreams, claiming they revealed the soul's corruption, while others advised villagers to disregard dreams caused by cold or hunger, calling them bodily tricks rather than divine messages. The contradiction only deepened the mystery. How could one know which dreams mattered and which were merely discomfort given form? You roll on the straw, muttering, and your sister nudges you with a sleepy elbow, dragging you partially toward waking. You hover in between, where the embers glow too brightly and your father's cough echoes louder than life. The dream world and the hut seem separated by a smoke-thin barrier. A pig grunts, startling you fully awake. The fire is dim, the hut unchanged, and your family sleeps around you. Still, the dream lingers heavily in your chest. You lie still, watching the rafters, smoke faintly swirling, and wonder whether it was only a dream or something more. Sleep eventually returns, lighter this time, fractured and fleeting. You understand now why medieval people spoke of dreams so frequently. They were not mere escape but a form of endurance, shaped by hunger, smoke, and the relentless cold. Whether warning, prophecy, or illusion, these dreams carried the weight of the outside world and the fragility of life within thin wooden walls. When you wake again, it isn't fear or hunger that stirs you but curiosity. You begin to consider whether the segmented rhythm of first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep was a traditional pattern or simply a necessity dictated by harsh winters. Surviving documents from the Middle Ages suggest segmented sleep was common, though there is no definitive answer. Some chronicles describe people waking at midnight to pray, tend fires, or even visit neighbors. Medical texts of the period treat first and second sleep as ordinary, noting that rising for an hour or two in the night was expected. You sit slightly, scanning the hut. Your father dozes in shallow bursts, ready to act if the fire falters. Your mother lies still, one arm over the baby, breathing shallowly but steady. Your siblings shift occasionally, muttering half-formed words. The hut follows this broken rhythm, everyone moving between wakefulness and sleep like tides. Some modern scholars argue this pattern was a natural response to long winter nights, darkness lasting 14 hours or more, too long for uninterrupted sleep. Others suggest necessity drove the practice. Fires needed tending, animals checked, dangers patrolled beyond the walls. Both explanations are plausible as you sit in the smoky dark, neither fully awake nor fully asleep. One court record even mentions a villager admitting to mischief during the hours between sleeps, suggesting that people sometimes used this time for more than prayer or chores, quiet conversations, intimacy, or small gatherings. You glance at your parents, wondering whether their whispers sometimes carried more than prayers. There is no consensus among historians on how widespread segmented sleep was. Did it occur across Europe, or only in regions with long winter nights? Some argue it was common, others believe it varied by region and circumstance. The debate continues, but in your hut, its reality feels undeniable. The night is too long to pass uninterrupted. You lie back down, folding your arms under your head, reflecting on how different this rhythm feels compared to one long, unbroken sleep. There is a certain intimacy to it. The midnight pause creates space to reflect, to pray, to converse softly, or simply to listen. Perhaps it makes the night less frightening, breaking darkness into pieces that can be endured rather than a single endless stretch. A peculiar folk belief suggested that dreams after the first sleep were more truthful and reliable, as the body was lighter and the soul freer to wander. You remember your grandmother insisting that morning dreams predicted harvests or illnesses, while early night dreams were merely meaningless noise. The thought lingers as you close your eyes again, considering whether your smoky visions of bread and wolves carry significance. The embers glow faintly under their ash cover, steady and patient. You exhale, letting your body sink back into the straw. Around you, others stir and settle in turn, a rhythm older than memory itself, waking, surrendering, and waking again. You drift toward second sleep, carrying with you the question, is this simply how humans naturally rest, or is it the rhythm dictated by a hut of smoke and frost under the weight of winter? Either way, you yield, eyes closing, body slipping into the cycle that has shaped countless nights before and will shape countless nights to come. The second sleep deepens, but soon you stir again, not from hunger or fear, but because the hut has grown louder. More voices, more breathing, more weight on the straw pallet. Blinking in the emberlight, you realize that another family has joined for the night. Village chronicles record that in the harshest winters, neighbors often sought shelter together. When cold became dangerous, it was safer to huddle collectively than for each household to face the night alone. Small huts became crowded spaces, filled with kin, cousins, neighbors, or travelers without refuge. Survival depended on numbers, with warmth measured in bodies rather than firewood. You shift to make room, pressing closer to your siblings as your aunt settles beside your mother, wrapping her cloak around a coughing child. On the far side, your uncle lays a rough sack on the floor for bedding. Even the animals seem disturbed by the newcomers. The goat bleats softly, the pig grunts in protest before settling back into straw. Parish records note that disputes sometimes arose during these crowded nights, arguments over space, blankets, or who tended the fire, but families still prioritized closeness over solitude. Better to argue warm than freeze apart. Scholars continue to debate how common this communal sheltering was. Some suggest it only occurred during severe storms or famine, while others argue it was routine in smaller villages with strong kinship and limited space. Whatever the frequency, tonight you feel its truth pressing against your shoulder. Survival here is a shared effort. The air grows heavier, thick with the breath of more people. Smoke hangs lower, eyes sting from it. Someone coughs, another snores, a prayer is murmured. Yet the warmth rises unmistakably, as if the hut itself exhales with each additional body. A curious folk practice notes that families sharing huts sometimes exchanged small charms or blessings before sleep. An aunt might tuck herbs under a host's pillow, or a cousin whisper a saint's name for protection. These small gestures ease tension, transforming necessity into ritual. You wonder if your aunt will do the same, hiding a charm in the folds of the quilt. You try to sleep again, though it is harder. A cousin's elbow nudges your side, your sister squirms and murmurs softly. Straw shifts under the added weight. Still, as your body adjusts, the warmth spreads. The draft from the door feels weaker, the cold less sharp. In this crowded heap, comfort is limited, but heat is abundant. Historians have long debated whether such closeness fostered intimacy or resentment. Did families emerge stronger from winters spent shoulder to shoulder, or weary from constant proximity? Perhaps both. Tomorrow may bring complaints, elbows, smells, snoring, but for now, the priority is survival. The hut groans under the wind, yet with twice as many people, the night feels less threatening. If wolves lurk outside, they will find the hut alive with sound. If the frost hag passes by, she will confront the warmth of many bodies resisting her chill. You smile faintly, drifting into drowsiness, cheek pressed against rough fabric, ears filled with the comforting chaos of human presence. The hut becomes not merely a shelter, but a gathering place for endurance. In winter, warmth is not a luxury, it is a shared responsibility, passed from body to body, night after night. You wake again, hearing the faint clink of clay mugs and low murmurs. In the middle of the night, your father has poured ale into wooden cups, sharing it with adults and giving the older children a small sip. Bleary-eyed, you accept the warm drink. It smells earthy and slightly sour, yet inviting. Medieval records show how essential ale and mead were for daily life. Winter water sources were often unsafe, muddied by runoff, and weak fermented beverages, low in alcohol, were safer and nourishing. At night, a sip or two offered comfort, warmth in liquid form. You lift the mug to your lips. The ale is tepid, slightly warmed by the fire, its bitterness softened by the faint sweetness of malt. The ale slides gently down your throat, settling in your stomach like a small ember. You exhale, shoulders loosening, the chill pushed back slightly. Around you, others do the same, their faces softening in the dim glow. Household accounts note that even children were sometimes given small portions of ale with supper or before bed. It wasn't considered indulgence or dangerous, simply nourishment. Stronger meads made from honey or spiced wines were reserved for the wealthy. For families like yours, ale was a daily source of sustenance in liquid form. Historians debate how much this nightly drink influenced medieval sleep. Some argue that ale acted as a mild sedative, dulling aches and anxiety, helping peasants rest despite discomfort. Others suggest its effect was minimal, more ritual than remedy. Sitting here now, the warmth in your chest and the gentle haze in your mind suggest the first explanation holds weight. Your aunt chuckles softly after a sip, her cheeks flushed in the firelight. Your father smiles faintly, the first sign of relief you've seen on his weary face tonight. Even your mother, usually careful and reserved, closes her eyes briefly, savoring the modest comfort. It isn't a feast, nor is it firewood, but it eases the night's burden. The scent of ale mingles with smoke and sweat in the hut, sharp but familiar, the aroma of every supper, festival, and tiring night. You sip the last drops reluctantly, chasing the flavor, and when your father retrieves the mug, a warm heaviness spreads through your limbs. Experts note that alcohol often blurred lines between nourishment and escape. For peasants, it eased pain and worry. For nobles, it became indulgence. In huts like yours, ale was neither luxury nor vice. It was a practical comfort, a subtle balm for frayed nerves. You lie back on the straw, eyes already drooping. Your sister giggles faintly beside you, slurring words about warm bread waiting in dreams. Even the baby, too young for ale, seems calmer in the soot-thick air, soothed by softened adult voices. The hut hums with low conversation, stories whispered in the dark. Someone recalls a summer harvest, another murmurs about a wedding feast. Memories float like warmth through the hut, brighter than the fire's glow. Hope lingers in the air. Gradually, voices fade, bodies settle, mugs are set aside, and the embers pulse softly. The blanket presses heavy, and the ale hums in your blood like a lullaby. Your last conscious thought is simple, almost grateful. Even in such a brutal winter, there is warmth to share, something to drink, a way to soften the night. You slip fully into second sleep, carried by ale, memory, and the promise of dawn. The ale's heat lingers in your chest, but soon the night asserts itself again. This time, it is not the cold or the creaking timbers that rouse you, but soft whispered prayers. Blinking into the dark, you see your mother's lips moving silently, her hands clasped over the baby as though shielding him with more than her arms. Medieval households relied heavily on devotion during long winters. Saints, relics, and prayers shaped daily life, but at night their presence felt sharper. Darkness was thick with dangers, wolves, sickness, hunger, frost, and faith became a shield. Invisible but powerful, it calmed the heart. You listen to her now. The words are familiar, a prayer to Saint Bridge, protector of hearths, asking her to guard the fire and keep frost at bay. Sometimes she prays to Saint Blay, patron of throats, when coughing grows worse. Other times she invokes Saint Joseph for shelter and safety. The saints are like unseen neighbors, their presence adding warmth to the hut. Rural records note a custom of placing small relics, bits of cloth touched by saints or crude wooden crosses, beneath pillows or near the hearth. Some families even stitched them into quilts, believing the holy objects extended blessings to every corner. You recall your grandmother hiding a tiny wooden cross in the rafters, telling you, "Let the smoke carry prayers upward," her voice firm yet gentle. Scholars debate whether such rituals provided genuine comfort or merely reflected church expectations. Did peasants find real security in nightly prayers, or whispered them out of habit and fear? Watching your mother in the firelight, it becomes clear that the belief itself is a form of warmth, as real as fire or fur. Your father stirs, murmuring his own low words, strength for the woodpile, health for the children, another day of survival. Faith does not erase fear but shapes it, giving it a name and form. In naming it, the burden feels lighter. You shift under the quilt, remembering how prayers blended with charms and folk practices. Salt at the door, herbs tucked under bedding, whispered words over embers, none of it contradictory. Religion and folk belief intertwined, forming a rope of hope strong enough to hold onto. Chronicles also mention the bedtime blessing of animals. Families would cross themselves and gesture toward pigs, goats, or hens, murmuring lines of protection. Animals, too, were considered vulnerable to frost and spirits. Watching your mother glance at the pig's corner, you realize she maintains that habit, her care encompassing every living thing in the hut. The baby sighs and nuzzles her chest, soothed by her words. Your sister, half asleep, mimics crossing herself, and even you find your lips moving in silence, repeating words you do not fully understand but know by heart. Experts note that religion offered medieval people a sense of continuity and stability. Each night's prayers echoed the last, linking one winter to another, one generation to the next. In a world where survival was uncertain, devotion tied life together, a thread carrying people through hardships. The hut feels calmer now. Embers glow steadily. The animals rest quietly. The wind outside softens to a whisper. Whether it is the presence of saints or the comfort of ritual, you feel steadier. Fear loosens, replaced by a gentle heaviness in your limbs. You close your eyes, your last thought not on wolves or hunger, but on the fragile, invisible shield woven by whispered prayers. They cannot stop frost pressing at the door, but they wrap the heart in warmth that cloth cannot provide. And sometimes, in winters like this, that is enough to return you to sleep. The hush of prayers is barely over when a new sound intrudes, the deep groan of timbers as wind lashes the walls. The hut trembles, joints creaking like an old ship in a storm. You open your eyes, watching flakes of frost sift from the rafters, dislodged by the gusts. Travelers' accounts often remark on how fragile peasant huts seemed during winter storms, built of rough-hewn logs and simple thatch. They kept out cold and wind only so much. When gales swept the village, walls flexed, roofs rattled, and thatch threatened to lift. Inside, families huddled together, listening to every groan as if waiting for collapse. You feel that anxiety now. The wind howls through the forest, striking the hut with sudden gusts that make the door rattle. A draft slips in, chilling your cheeks. A cousin mumbles in sleep, tugging the quilt tighter, while your father grips his staff, tense even lying down. Everyone senses the storm pressing against this fragile shell. Village records note that children were sometimes instructed to press their hands against walls during storms, as if their small weight could help hold the hut steady. You remember doing this as a child, palms flat on rough boards, whispering that you were keeping the house from blowing away. Tonight, the urge nearly rises again, though you know it changes nothing. Scholars debate how well huts resisted extreme weather. Some argue that timber structures packed with clay and dung were surprisingly strong. Others cite frequent roof collapses and wall failures under heavy snow. Likely, the truth depended on skill, luck, and constant repair, factors that determined whether a family slept safely. Inside, the storm intensifies. The fire hisses as wind surges through cracks, feeding embers with sudden bursts. The roof sighs under the weight of snow sliding down, each thud startling sleepers. A chicken flaps briefly before settling. The pig grunts sharply, reminding the storm the hut is occupied. One folk practice for such nights was scattering ashes across the threshold to confuse malevolent spirits carried by the wind. Families sometimes drove iron nails or knives into doorframes as talismans against collapse. You notice your father's iron blade nearby, a small comfort weather tool or charm. You lie still, heart racing with each groan of the walls. The hut is not just wood and straw. It feels alive, straining like another family member. You whisper in thought, almost as a prayer, "Hold fast. Don't break. Stay with us." Experts note that storms like these shaped imagination as well as sleep. Tales of spirits riding wind, witches flying through night gales, or saints battling demons grew from nights lying awake, listening to roofs tremble and doors shake. In fragile darkness, every sound could become a story. Gradually, your body adapts. The storm is loud, but rhythmic. The howl, rattle, groan, repeat, familiar in their violence. Your breathing slows. You burrow deeper under the quilt, pressed by cousins and siblings. The hut may bend, but it holds. Your eyelids droop as the storm continues, and you understand why ancestors filled long winters with survival stories. Because in moments like this, the only things standing between you and the storm are a fragile hut, a patchwork quilt, and sheer will. Somehow, against the odds, it endures. The storm quiets, though not completely. Wind no longer rattles the door forcefully, but a softer hiss remains, snow piling against the hut. You shift in the straw, realizing that the night's struggle has only changed shape. Now, it isn't the wind but the creeping weight of snow pressing on fragile walls. Medieval accounts describe snow as a physical danger. Drifts could block doors, collapse roofs, and trap families inside. Chroniclers report winters where houses disappeared beneath white silence, entire hamlets buried. You feel a draft near the door. Your father rises, muttering, grabbing a wooden shovel, and pushes hard against the barrier. Powdery snow spills in, cold air rushing behind. He curses softly, then shovels again, clearing enough to keep the door from sealing shut. Even in sleep, winter demands effort. Folk practices included propping poles against roof beams to remind the house to hold its shape under snow, or tapping rafters before bed to warn spirits. You glance upward, wondering if the roof's groan is only wood under strain, or if something unseen presses down too. Historians debate whether snow was friend or foe. Some argue drifts pressed against huts acted as insulation, trapping heat like crude igloos. Others insist the weight was always a threat. Both seem plausible as you lie there. Snow muffles the walls, warming the hut, but each creak tightens your stomach. Animals stir. The goat shifts in its tether, stamping once, ears twitching. The pig grunts low, burrowing deeper into straw. Even hens ruffle nervously on their perches. Animals sense weight and silence differently from humans. Their unease spreads quickly through the hut, rousing everyone bit by bit, a ripple of awareness in the smoky darkness. One unusual note in village law records is the belief that when animals grew restless during snowstorms, it could signal that the roof might fail soon. Families sometimes carried goats or chickens outside in the dead of night to lighten the load, a desperate act when snow pressed too heavily. You imagine such a scene and shiver, picturing your father pushing animals through deep drifts under a frozen sky. The hut groans again but holds. Your mother tucks the quilt tighter over you and your siblings, whispering soothing words while her eyes flick toward the ceiling. You understand the gesture. Children must be calmed. Even if parents feel the same fear, the quilt is warmer now, bodies pressed together, snow muting the roar of the wind outside. For a brief moment, it almost feels peaceful, as if the world has been muffled. Experts note that such nights shaped resilience and folklore alike. The silence of snow was often described as eerie, even otherworldly. Some villagers claimed to hear voices carried through the white, as though spirits moved freely under the blanket of winter. Others saw snow as a divine gift, a quilt laid over the earth, just as families stitched quilts around themselves. Fear and reverence mingled in the same frozen air. You press your hand against the wall, feeling the faint chill of snow through the boards. It is both barrier and threat. Your eyes close again, mind drifting between the warmth of the quilt and the image of white drifts pressing against the hut. The night continues, heavy but steady. The roof creaks, animals shift. Your father mutters a prayer while settling beside your mother. You press closer between your siblings, surrendering once more to sleep, trusting the hut, its beams, and the stubborn will to survive to hold the snow at bay until morning. As dawn approaches, the pressure of snow eases. But you wake again, not from cold or fear, but from the discomfort of too many bodies in a confined space. The straw mattress feels smaller by the hour, compressed under kin, neighbors, and animals. Your shoulder aches where a cousin has rolled against it, and your legs go numb beneath your brother's knee. Medieval accounts confirm that overcrowding was typical. Privacy was nearly unknown to peasant families. Whole households, and sometimes extended kin, shared a single sleeping space. In winter, there was no thought of comfort or dignity, only whether collective body heat outweighed the discomfort of limbs tangled together. You nudge your cousin gently, trying to reclaim a bit of space, but he only grumbles and tightens his blanket. You turn instead toward your sister, whose hair brushes your nose. Everywhere you move, you touch someone else. The hut feels less like a home and more like a crowded ship at sea, everyone packed together, surviving in fragile balance. Folk traditions note that families often developed sleeping hierarchies. Elders claimed the outer edges, guarding against drafts and shielding younger children in the middle. Teenagers were sometimes pushed to the coldest corners, expected to endure with youthful resilience. Tonight, you notice the pattern. Parents on the edges, younger siblings clustered in the center, yourself caught between duty and comfort. Social historians debate whether such close sleeping fostered intimacy or tension. Some argue shared warmth strengthened family bonds. Others suggest constant lack of privacy bred quarrels and resentment. You feel both truths, comfort in your sister's warmth, irritation at your cousin's elbow. The sense of overcrowding are strong tonight, sweat mingling with ale on your father's breath, the musky odor of animals, the sharp tang of smoke. The air feels almost pressing, heavier than the quilt itself. Yet within that weight lies reassurance. So many heartbeats, so much breath. Proof that life endures. Parish records note that when huts were crowded, children sometimes played guessing who was snoring, learning to identify relatives by sound and laughing quietly in the dark. You smile faintly at the thought, hearing your uncle's deep rumble from one side, your aunt's higher whistle from another. Even discomfort held small amusements. You shift again, pressing your back against the cold wall, brushing against frost creeping along the boards, a reminder of the thin barrier outside. But when your sister nestles closer, warm breath against your cheek, the contrast eases. Experts highlight how communal sleeping blurred the line between individual and collective life. Decisions were made together, stories shared, dreams overheard. There was little room for secrecy. You notice your father muttering prayers aloud, your mother humming lullabies, cousins grumbling about dreams. Everything was public, even in sleep. Gradually, discomfort softens as exhaustion returns. Your limbs adjust to the tangle, finding a crooked but manageable arrangement. The press of bodies, though irritating, is also steadying. Alone, cold would consume you. Together, it becomes bearable. You close your eyes, ears filled with layered breaths, snoring and shifting. The hut feels like a single living creature, dozens of lungs moving in uneven rhythm, hearts thudding in scattered unison. You are one part of it, inseparable from the whole. With that thought, you drift back to sleep, lulled not by comfort, but by the sheer weight of human closeness, the warmth of many lives crowded into one fragile wooden hut, enduring the harsh winter together. The weight of bodies keeps you warm, but warmth is never stable. You wake again when someone shifts the quilt, letting a rush of cold air through the drafty cracks. You pull desperately, tugging the blanket over your shoulders. In a crowded heap, coverings are always a struggle. Medieval household inventories confirm how precious blankets and quilts were. For wealthier families, there were woolen cloaks, fur throws, and feather quilts, items beyond the reach of peasants, who relied on shared coverings for survival. For peasants, bedding often meant patched quilts, coarse woolen mantles, or sometimes nothing more than a cloak worn by day and repurposed at night. These coverings were more than comfort, they were shields against death in the coldest months. You bury your chin beneath the heavy cloth, seeking where warmth still lingers. The edges are damp, stained from melted snow tracked in earlier. Your cousin tugs at it too, and for a moment you glare in the darkness, knowing he is just as desperate as you. One curious folk practice in parts of Europe involved placing heated bricks or stones, wrapped in rags, at the foot of the bed to keep toes from freezing. In huts like yours, embers sometimes rested in clay pots, carefully sealed, then placed near the bedding. Dangerous, yes, but worth the risk when frost bit deep. You imagine how welcome such warmth would feel against your numb feet. Experts debate how often peasants slept under fur. Fur blankets appear in wills and dowries, but rarely in village accounts. Some argue poor families kept hides mainly for clothing, while others suggest that in desperate winters, furs were spread over bedding. You recall curling beneath a sheepskin once, the lanolin strong, but the warmth unforgettable. The quilt covering you now is less luxurious. Wool patched with linen, with a strip of fur stitched haphazardly at the edge. It scratches your skin and smells of smoke, sweat, and damp earth. Yet you cling to it fiercely. Imperfect though it is the only barrier between your body and the icy drafts slipping through the hut's seams. One unusual tradition held that red cloth could ward off illness. Families sometimes added a red patch to quilts, believing it carried protective power. In the dim ember light, you glimpse a faded crimson square sewn near the edge, your mother's work no doubt. Whether charm or necessity, it offers a strange reassurance. The quilt shifts again as someone moves, and the cold sneaks in once more. You groan, tugging it back. In this hut, sharing means compromise. No one has enough, yet everyone has just barely enough to survive. Blankets are tugged back and forth all night, but no one dares hoard them completely. To do so could doom others. Scholars suggest this constant negotiation of warmth shaped social bonds as much as survival. Children learned early not to cling selfishly to coverings, and adults endured discomfort for the group's sake. You sense the truth now, loosening your grip to let the quilt cover your sister. Her small sigh of relief warms you more than the cloth itself. The quilt settles heavily again, and beneath it warmth slowly returns, a fragile bubble of shared heat. Outside, the wind still howls and the rafters creak, but inside this patchwork covering, you feel shielded, if only barely. Your eyelids close once more. The blanket scratches, smells, and shifts constantly, yet it is lifeline, memory, and shield all at once. It may not banish the cold entirely, but it proves that stitched scraps can hold back death's chill, and that is enough to carry you into sleep again. You shift, aching where straw has thinned to bare earth. No bedding lasts forever. Each night, as families turn and press their weight into it, straw flattens, dampens, and grows foul. Cold seeps upward through worn layers, the ground beneath unyielding and icy. Archaeological evidence and medieval household notes confirm bedding required frequent replacement. Straw pallets were never permanent. They were seasonal, sometimes renewed every few weeks, sometimes stretched until spring, depending on resources. In winter, when snow blanketed fields, fresh straw or rushes were hard to collect. Families endured the smell and discomfort far longer than they wished. You roll slightly and inhale. The scent is sharp: sweat, smoke, animal musk, even the faint ammonia where children or animals couldn't always hold through the night. This is the reality rarely written into heroic tales of castles and knights. Survival in huts meant living with stench and filth woven into every straw stalk. A curious rural saying held that clean rushes meant a clean soul. Replacing bedding was sometimes seen as more than hygiene. It was spiritual duty. In towns, churches replaced rushes regularly, scattering herbs like lavender or mint among them. Peasants did the same when possible, though in winter, mint and lavender were only memories of summer. Scholars remain divided. Did constant exposure dull the senses, or did people endure the stink while noticing it sharply? Sermons and folk rhymes complaining about fleas, lice, and odors suggest the latter. Lying here, scratching your arm, you know there is no ignoring it entirely. Fleas bite whenever you shift. You slap absently at your leg, then curl tighter, careful not to disturb them too much. Your sister scratches as well, nails rasping softly in the dark. Rustling becomes part of the night soundtrack, as inevitable as snores or creaking beams. One folk practice involved sprinkling ash in bedding to repel vermin. Others tucked herbs into straw during harvest, hoping the scent would last through winter. You remember finding a brittle sprig of rosemary once, faintly fragrant amid the stink, a small promise of summer. Experts note that despite squalor, bedding remained central to medieval life. Births, deaths, illnesses, and nightly rest all unfolded on the same pallet. Straw absorbed not only odor and vermin, but the milestones of existence. It was both despised and indispensable. You close your eyes, focusing on the quilt's weight rather than the itch of fleas. Your cousin shifts, releasing a puff of dust into the air. It stings your nose and makes you cough softly, yet exhaustion presses heavier than discomfort. Though the bedding smells, it itches and collapses beneath you, it still lifts you above the frozen earth, keeping death's chill from fully reaching your bones. And so, despite the stench, the vermin, the aches, you surrender once more to shallow slumber, proving that survival rarely resembles comfort. It is endurance. The itching of fleas and the smell of damp straw gradually fade into the rhythm of breath and warmth. But sleep remains shallow, your mind drifting toward the fire, your most fragile lifeline. Even banked under ash, embers can die before dawn, and without them, the hut would become a tomb of frost. Medieval life demanded careful nighttime firekeeping. Families rarely allowed the flame to die completely. Relighting in winter was both difficult and dangerous. Embers were covered with ash to smolder slowly, conserving heat until morning. This banking kept coals alive, ready to flare with new fuel. You turn toward the hearth, squinting at the faint pulse of red beneath gray ash, like the heartbeat of the hut itself. Your father rises, shoulders stooped, prodding the coals with an iron poker. A small stick added, enough to coax life back into the fire without wasting wood. The glow brightens slightly, smoke curling upward into the rafters. One curious folk method involved covering embers with dried dung mixed with straw. It insulated coals better than ash alone, keeping them alive until morning. The smell, acrid and strong, was tolerated because smoke was preferable to freezing. You wrinkle your nose, imagining your father using such a trick tonight. Scholars still debate how much of a peasant's day revolved around firekeeping. Some claim it was constant labor, the hearth demanding attention like a living creature. Others say it became second nature, integrated seamlessly into routines. Watching your father now, you see truth in both. The fire is burden and companion alike, demanding care but rewarding it with survival. The animals shift as sparks leap. The goat stamps, startled. The hens murmur. The pig lifts its head, grunts, then sinks back. Fire warms humans, yes, but it calms the entire hut. Without it, beasts would grow as restless as people. One folk custom preserved in local law notes that families sometimes spoke to the fire as if it were alive, thanking it aloud for warmth. You recall your grandmother patting the hearth edge, murmuring, "Stay with us." Perhaps superstition, perhaps affection, but in nights like this, the fire feels a family member. Your father lowers himself again, satisfied. The embers glow steadily, painting his face in faint red light before he disappears under the quilt. The hut settles, warmed not by roaring flames, but by quiet coals' endurance. Experts note hearths were more than heat, they were centers of life. Food was cooked there, stories told, prayers whispered. Even in sleep, the fire remained the hut's heart. Lose it, and families faced not merely discomfort but death. You sigh, comforted by the glow. Smoke stings your eyes, yet you are grateful. Closing your eyes, the knowledge of embers alive and waiting eases your mind. Sleep wraps around you like the quilt, fragile, but sufficient. The fire will hold until dawn, carried by vigilance, tradition, and stubborn human will. And yet the night presses still. You wake again not from cold or noise, but from the sheer weight of it, heavy and unending, darkness thick around you like a second quilt, suffocating, eternal. Medieval chronicles often note how long nights weighed on the mind. In Northern Europe, winter darkness could last 14 hours or more, without lamps or candles. Peasants lived mostly in shadow. Night's length was as much a challenge as the cold. You strain your eyes for light beyond the rafters. Only faint silver leaks in, softened by snow. The hut feels swallowed, a small box adrift in black. Even the red glow of embers seems fragile, as though a single breath might snuff it out. One custom described in monastic writings was counting prayers or reciting memorized psalms to mark time. Without clocks, ritual or repetition measured hours. Families whispered litanies together. Individuals muttered words alone. Children sometimes counted breaths or rosary beads until sleep returned. You do the same now, count 1, 2, 3, as though numbers might shorten the night. Scholars debate whether peasants feared darkness more than cold. Some argue night carried associations with evil, danger, despair. Others suggest villagers accepted shadow as part of life. Lying here, staring into endless black, you feel why fear lingered. Darkness is not absence. It presses, suffocates, stretches infinite. Every sound magnifies. A cousin coughs, louder than thunder. The goat shifts, hooves clattering like storms. Your own heartbeat thuds intrusively. Without light, perception grows vast. Your mind invents shapes and whispers that are not real. A folk belief warned that staring too long into darkness allowed spirits to climb into your eyes. Children were told to close their lids quickly lest the dark enter. You obey, wary of rafter shadows. Yet closing eyes brings uneasy dreams, half-waking visions, echoes of wolves outside. Scholars suggest winter darkness shaped medieval spirituality and imagination profoundly. Night was metaphor, trial, sin, and despair, but also a space of waiting, endurance, and eventual redemption. Just as dawn always followed, faith taught that light would overcome shadow. Whether villagers believed this literally or clung to it as hope, the rhythm of darkness and dawn shaped every night of their lives. You shift in the straw, curling tighter beneath the quilt. Your sister presses against you, murmuring in her sleep, her warmth a reminder that you are not alone. Darkness may feel eternal, but you share its weight with others. Gradually your breathing slows. The night's heaviness remains, softened by the presence of family. Their bodies steady you, anchors in the sea of black. The hut endures, the fire glows faintly, dawn, though invisible, remains promised. With that assurance, you drift once more into uneasy dreams, carried by the knowledge that no night lasts forever. You wake again, but this time the air feels different. Smoke and sweat still mingle with straw, bodies press close, but faint light filters through the roof's cracks. Dawn stirs. Medieval accounts note that villagers often rose before sunrise, guided by the faintest gray light. For peasants, dawn brought no rest, only labor, feeding animals, breaking ice for water, preparing the day's meager meal. Yet even exhaustion carries relief. Another night has passed without collapse, wolves, or death. You stretch stiff limbs, others groan and shift. The baby fusses, sensing change before sight. Your father lifts his head, eyes blurry but determined, reaching for boots. The pig snorts, shaking straw, hens ruffle feathers in anticipation. One folk custom was greeting dawn with a whispered blessing. Thanks for surviving another night, crossing themselves as light entered the hut. Not ceremony, but instinct, born of gratitude that frost and shadow had not claimed them. You murmur your own quiet thanks, lips barely moving, words as natural as breath. Scholars note that dawn brought survival, not comfort. Hunger would follow, chores would weigh, and cold would still bite. Yet psychologically, that thin line of light mattered immensely. It marked time, proved winter had not won, showed the endless night had been endured. The quilt is heavy, damp with sweat and smoke. You push it aside, feeling the rush of cold air. The shock makes you shiver but sharpens your mind. Around you, family and neighbors stir, weary but alive. Survival has been achieved again. Village lore held that roosters chased away evil spirits. Through the muffled snow you hear one crow. The sound cuts through the last remnants of night like a blade. Spirits, frost hags, wolves, all banished, at least until darkness returns. Experts describe medieval mornings as both bleak and hopeful. Bleak for the labor, hopeful for the simple fact of another day. You see that truth now as your mother stirs, humming a morning prayer while shaking straw from her hair. The embers glow faintly, ready to be coaxed back to flame. The hut stands, walls upright despite the storm. The snow outside may be high, but life endures. You inhale deeply, smoky air filling your lungs, and allow yourself a final moment of stillness before the day begins. This is the rhythm of winter life. Nights of fear, cold, and endurance followed by mornings of survival. Each day brings the same trials, hunger, chores, fragile fire, but also the same quiet victory. You have outlasted the night. Imagine the embers glowing faintly in the hearth, small but steady, carrying warmth to weary bodies. Picture the quilt pulled to your chin, its weight protective, stitched with scraps of memory and care. Around you, the soft breath and snoring of family are reassurance, proof that life continues in fragile harmony. The cold cannot touch you here. The snow may fall endlessly. The wind may shake the walls, but inside this hut, there is shelter, warmth, and belonging. Close your eyes. Let the crackle of the fire, the rustle of straw, and the rhythm of sleep carry you further into calm. Remember, no night is endless. Darkness always yields to light. Just as peasants centuries ago endured winters with patience and faith, so can you let the weight of the night rest easy on your shoulders. You are safe in this story, safe in its rhythm, safe in its hush. Breathe in, breathe out, steadily, gently. Allow your body to grow heavier, your thoughts quieter, your heart steadier. Let the long night fade behind you. Drift, as they did, into peaceful rest.